Today's lesson is section 1.6, and we're talking about special quadrilaterals. First, we're going to talk about the trapezoid. On the left, we have examples of trapezoids, and on the right, we have 3 examples that are not trapezoids. You can see from these examples that a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. Next is the kite. On the left, we have some kites. On the right, we have some examples of polygons that are not kites. Looking at these examples, we can see that a kite is a quadrilateral with 2 distinct pairs of congruent consecutive sides. Next, parallelogram. On the left, we have 2 examples of parallelograms, and on the right, we have 3 examples of polygons that are not parallelograms. Looking closely at these examples, we can conclude that a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with 2 pairs of parallel sides. Then we have the rhombus. On the left, we have 2 examples of rhombuses. On the right, we have 3 examples of polygons that are not rhombuses. After looking closely at these, we see that a rhombus is an equilateral parallelogram. Next is the rectangle. I'm sure we're all familiar with rectangles, but how do we define it? Well, on the left, we have 2 rectangles, and on the right, we have 3 examples of not rectangles. So the definition of a rectangle is an equiangular parallelogram. And finally, the square. On the left, 2 examples of squares. On the right, 3 examples of polygons that are not squares. The definition of a square: an equilateral rectangle, or an equiangular rhombus, or a regular quadrilateral. It's kind of nice to finish the lesson up with the square because it's a perfect example of how these different quadrilaterals can be defined in more than one way. You can see on this slide that we have 3 different definitions of a square, all of which are correct. And of course, we could probably break down each of those definitions into simpler language. For example, equilateral rectangle, we could also say a rectangle with 4 congruent sides. That would be a correct definition as well.